welcome back to Shockmania. I am the Arty Dans. Now, I've got something a little different for you because I know you're sick of seeing my ugly face all the time. I've called in a very special guest. That's my co-host of Shockmania Live, Mr. NeddKnight, and he's going to give you his rundown of the 5 most underrated zombie films out there. Well, at least in his opinion. I asked him to come up with this list, and I think he delivered quite well. So, without further ado, and rather than wasting any more of your time, let's head into Neddy's top 5 underrated zombie flicks. Take it away, buddy.
Welcome to Shockmania. I am not the Arty Dans. I am NeddKnight, Dan's co-host for Shockmania Live, and well, the reason why you're seeing my face and listening to my shrill voice is because Dan has asked me to come up with 5 under the radar zombie movies. Not exactly an easy task. Zombie is one of the biggest troped concept subgenre of horror, and everyone's sort of heard of all the big George Romero's and the zombie movies of the 70s. And of course, now with the 28 years later, sequel to 28 weeks later, sequel to 28 days later. Probably should have stayed at days, although years was okay. But anyways, I had to come up with 5 movies that you may not have heard of. I'm pretty sure I got 3 of them that most of you will never have heard of. Some of you might have, but maybe never thought to watch. So this might convince you. We'll see. Go to number 5, The Serpent and the Rainbow. 1998 Wes Craven movie. You might know him. He's done Nightmare on Elm Street. He's done Scream. And yes, he did a quick stint in a zombie flick. Although I'm sure some of you who are familiar with the movie might not quite think of this as your prototypical zombie movie. And it's not. It's not. But it does star Bill Pullman. And the tagline is, because taglines are very important to a kid growing up in the 80s who went to a video store and really had nothing to go on except for the cover art in the box, the tagline on the box. The tagline is, "Don't bury me, I'm not dead," which is spoken by the protagonist of the film, played by Bill Pullman. Bill Pullman plays Dr. Dennis Allen, who is bit of a quasi Indiana Jones type guy, except instead of an archaeologist, he's an anthropologist. And he doesn't have a gun or a whip, but he's got good looks, and he's a bit rugged, and he's real ballsy, and he's hired by a pharmaceutical company um, to basically go down to Haiti and investigate what they've heard is a drug that's able to bring people out of death into a zombie-like state. Now, when he's down in Haiti, he runs into who is the villain of the movie, a man by the name of Jarjant Petrad. He's played by Zakes Moquet, who is not only a voodoo witch doctor, but he's also the head honcho of the secret police. So pretty much he can literally controls people's minds and bodies with this drugs that he can blow on people's faces or allow them, or they can consume on their own, as well as he controls the secret police and he rules with an iron fist. Bill Pullman and him, they battle. There's a bit of a chase. There's a lot of chasing. There's a lot of Bill Pullman trying to sort of sneak through alleys and try to find out how he can get his hands on this chemical, and if in fact it does induce zombieism and resurrects people. So while there's not, again, it's not exactly a zombie flare with screaming, clawing, eat brains type zombies coming after you, climbing through the walls. It does have a zombie theme throughout it, and of course, it's heavily voodoo influenced. And as I said, the tagline, "Don't bury me, I'm not dead," that's spoken by Bill Pullman, who we can see on the cover of the disc or the VCR tape or the movie poster. You see him kind of screaming through a closed coffin door coming on his face, and for some reason he's got an ash crucifix on top of his forehead as he's being buried pretty much while he's alive, but not alive. Spoiler. Um, there is some high tension in this movie. There is a bit of sadisticness, particularly from the villain, who to me is the real secret sauce of this movie. Bill Pullman's fine. He's charismatic. He's a good-looking character on screen, but the villain, as with many, many movies, is what really makes this kind of a compelling horror film for me. So I think that's what Wes Craven pretty much delivers, kind of a almost campy, high tension, where's this movie taking me type of horror movie. So I don't know if I really sold you on it. But again, if you saw the cover art and you wondered, what's a serpent and a rainbow mean? And why is Bill Pullman trying to get dragged into a coffin? I don't know, this might have tickled you. Hey, it's number five. Trying to go under the radar here. The Girl with All the Gifts, 2016. This is a British movie directed by Paul McCarthy, who later actually did a couple TV episodes of Sherlock and Peaky Blinders. It stars Senya Naua, who plays Melanie, the girl with all the gifts. And the tagline here, it, I hate it. I hate the tagline here because it really leans into the whole idea. I mean, the title says it all, the girl with all the gifts, but the tagline is, our greatest threat is our only hope. Again, that tagline's terrible. And yes, this is about a girl who was the key to everything. And here we are in a sort of mid to post-apocalyptic zombie infested, although they're called hungries in this movie. The word zombie is not used. There's a fungal infection, and these hungries are taking over at least the United Kingdom, ostensibly the world, but the movie is pretty localized to essentially this one outpost where the movie begins that's held by a military man who's played by Paddy Considine, who's just amazing. I love him and everything he does, as well as the head surgeon played by Glenn Close, and a teacher, Helen Justino, played by Gemma Arterton. Gemma forms a tight relationship with Melanie. In fact, all these what's in the encampment are all these children here, and they're discovering that children are somehow able to resist the mindlessness that comes with this fungal infection. However, if you subject them to the smell of blood or something like that, they go quite ravenous or quite crazy. But of all of these kids, Melanie is the one who's able to emote the most. She shows the most mental acuity, and she's the most composed. And she's half during half of this movie, she's cute as a button. And it's kind of one of the charms of this movie. But there's an outbreak. The camp gets overthrown. They all have to escape. Of course, the people who get out are the characters I already mentioned to you, along with Melanie and a couple of red shirt military guys that are there for hungry fodder throughout the movie as they try to get to another laboratory outpost. Because the girl with all the gifts, mentioned head surgeon, played by Glenn Close, she wants to get brain fluid and brain material from her to develop a virus. And if all this kind of sounds familiar, fungal activity causing zombie-like creatures, and there's a young girl, and she's trying to get couriered across a post-apocalyptic zombie-infested city. Yeah, this does bear a lot of resemblances to the story behind The Last of Us. I'm only going to refer to the first season, or basically the first game that came out. Both these was both the short story that movie was based off of, and the screenplay came out relatively close to about the time that the game was released. I'll say that in terms of comparing the two, I love the world building with this movie. The relationship between the father-daughter trek through the wasteland and Last of Us is amazing, but the world building here is exceptional. I thought they did a much better job explaining the fungal infection that's causing the plague across the world, and they also get a little bit deeper into the philosophical nature of what these hungries are. Are they alive? Are they undead? Are they curable? Some of the highlights of the movie are basically how Melanie interacts with her captors slash protectors slash couriers because while they're trying to keep her with them, and she wants to stay with them because she likes them, she's also incredibly dangerous because if she gets a fit of hunger, then she can jump and tear any one of their faces off at a moment's notice. To keep her with a mask on for most of the movie. And there's some delightful scenes where she sort of kind of breaks away so she could grab a rabbit or a cat, chow down on it, and then you see her walking in, blood-stained shirt, just waving to her captor, saying, "I'm all right, much better now." And she throws on the mask by herself, which I'm thinking, what's the point of having the mask if she can take it on or off it? Well, it's clearly just a show. Um, where the movie really sort of nearly derails me is in the third act, where we get a sort of Beyond Thunderdome meets um, Lord of the Flies. And again, it really threw me off. Some mileage may vary depending upon what you're kind of looking for in a movie, and you have to sort of grade on a bit of a curve when it comes to child actors. That's as far as I'll take it. And then the very ending of the movie, again, I already hinted tries to give you that philosophical little bit tickle on whether or not these hungries are still living. Are they a new species? And I have to just give one tad bit of spoiler because the movie tries to leave us with this bit of ambiguity of who actually are the villains of the story. It's the zombie girl. Make no mistake. I'm not going to allow myself to be emotionally manipulated just because she's cute. Okay? She's the bad guy, and her teacher's an accomplice. Blood Quantum. This is a 2019 film. It's Canadian, takes place in Quebec. And it is centered around a tribe of Indians. The tribe is the Mi'kmaq. So the movie opens up with an old man who's fishing, and he's filleting some fish, and some of the fish decide they're not dead yet. And you know that because they're flopping around. So he finds that unusual. We then get introduced to the rest of the cast. Sheriff Taylor, who is this old man's son, his two sons, the grandson of the old man, Joss and Joseph. And Joss is the older brother, and he's a half brother to Joseph through an affair that the father had. These two brothers are kind of a bit of a Cain and Abel of the story. There's some other characters in there as well. But the first opening scenes of the movie basically introduced to the families. We learn that Joseph has a girlfriend, a white girl who is pregnant, and they're 18. So there's a bit of sort of a, kind of controversy family. You just got this white girl pregnant. What are you going to do? You're ready to be a man, etc. We learn about the dead fish and who are not dead anymore. And then things start to explode all around town. And they realize they're, boom, right at the onset of a zombie apocalypse. Then we fast forward. No, we're in the outskirts of a zombie apocalypse. But through these series and chains of events, two of them get bitten, including the sheriff. And lo and behold, they're not infected. And we learn that this tribe of Indians is immune to the zombie infection. We fast forward, and the majority of the movie really kind of takes place where they are now sort of established in this fort meant to keep people out and keep themselves safe. And they have to decide whether or not they're going to allow white people to come into their camp. People who are essentially not just white people, but people who are not Indians or not of their blood. So that brings us to the title, Blood Quantum. So blood quantum is essentially used to determine ancestry and what percentage Indian you might have, what tribe you may come from. The writer and director Jeff Barnaby for sure kind of has a clever sort of double take on blood quantum because now the blood of this tribe right here is impervious to this virus. Please don't let me mistake you. This is not a heavy-handed movie. Um, it's fun. It's got some good gore, and what I love about the movie is, frankly, the scenes where we see the sheriff, his father, and one of his buddies, Bumper, just going hit squad style, banging on doors and businesses and taking out zombies. The sheriff's got a shotgun. His buddy Bumper's got this sort of like badass makeshift hand axe. Well, it's more of a battle axe, really. And his father's swinging his katana all Samurai Jack style. And the movie, while it tries to sort of give you some of that messaging, still has fun with itself. An it's still a very much of an action-packed zombie gore fest that you would get with most of these post-apocalyptic type zombies. The dynamic in the family feels genuine. It's a lot of the dialogue. Just feels like real. It's very immersive, the world and the characters who you get to know. You're not really sure who to quite root for, but clearly Joseph seems to be, again, it's a bit of a Cain and Abel between the two brothers. And Joseph seems to be, the able side of the things, a little bit more morally pointed north. I mean, it's established actually quite early on that Joss is kind of the bad boy of the group, and he clearly disapproves of the whole letting non-Indians into the encampment. And well, without getting too much spoilers, let's just say that that dynamic has dramatic implications on how they protect or don't protect a lot of the people here. The knocks on this movie are the editing is not great. It could be a little bit jumpy, but you have to give some grading on a curve here for the low budget nature of this movie and where it was shot and the thematics of the movie. So it's a nice recommend, which a lot of you haven't heard of it before. If you have, great. I'm curious what you thought of it. If you haven't, give it a watch. If you think it sucks, let us know. Anyways, on to number two. Number two, yummy! Exclamation point. It is a 2019 Belgium film, and I'm going to give you the tagline, which is pretty much tell you all you need to know about this movie. Facelifts, boob jobs, and zombies. If that hasn't hooked you, then I'll give you a little bit snippet more to what this plot is. We have Allison and Michael. They're a nice young couple. Michael is a bit of a simp. He is looking for the right opportunity to propose to his girlfriend. But they're on their way to this clinic with her mother in back seat. And we can see immediately there's a bit of a difference between the daughter and the mom. The daughter is trying to be very reserved and very modest. And the mother is all out there, makeup, big lips, Botox, you name it. Now, the problem is the daughter has a hard time remaining modest and composed because she has amazing assets. And she's actually going to the clinic to get a breast reduction surgery, which should be illegal. But be that as it may, that's how the movie opens, and we also see a little snippet inside this clinic where they are about to remove this body, and they do it through an incinerator. And the doctor and this other attendant suspiciously get out of the room right after they lock the lid, and I guess there's a overzealous janitor who happens to get into the room and start cleaning, and here's a rapping on the glass of the incinerator as it's lit and cooking this body inside. Well, being a real helpful janitor, he goes to open it up and help out that person, and I think you can kind of figure out what happens. It doesn't go so well for the janitor. And now we have Allison, Michael, their mother, some other wacky patients, the doctors, the nurse, and the staff, and they're all trapped in this plastic surgery hospital in the middle of a zombie infestation. And it's an escape movie. It's a bit of like The Raid, but minus the guns and the kung fu and the amazing choreographed action. Instead, you just get this wonky, zany gore. The movie does not take itself. The movie is serious enough that you feel the impending doom of what happens if they go in that next room. And the gore is sufficient that you get skeeved out, but you can also find yourself laughing at all of the sort of gags that the movie throws at you. I mean, Michael, her boyfriend, is terrified of the sight of blood. And that's a problem for him. It gets established quite early that he has a hard time functioning with all this blood and carnage happening around him. I couldn't help but marvel at how entertained I was during this movie. This movie to me is a better version of Shaun of the Dead. And that could be sacrilege, I'm sure, because I know how highly regarded Shaun of the Dead is. And I like Shaun of the Dead quite a bit. But this has that same level of camp, that same level of gore, that same level of dread. Probably not as sharply filmed, but in terms of hitting all the notes and all the little moments that happen throughout the movie, uh, I'm leaning towards yummy. So please, if you want to sit back and have a fun, zombie infested plastic surgery clinic with a bunch of people just desperate to try to get the heck out of there, I'm recommending you go see this movie. It's it's delicious. Pun intended. Okay. Number one. Now this movie right here, I'm gonna take you back to the 80s. It isn't just my number one zombie movie under the radar, but this is easily in my top five 80s horror movies. And it's probably my number one zombie movie of all time. I rewatched it recently and I forgot how damn fucking entertaining this movie is. It is the 1986 movie Night of the Creeps, and it's directed by Fred Decker. Uh, Now, Fred Decker went on to do RoboCop 3, which is my least favorite RoboCop by a wide margin. But Fred, fantastic job with Night of the Creeps. The movie opens up in 1959, and the opening scenes of this movie tells you just kind of what kind, just blah, blah, and the opening scenes of this movie tells you just what kind of ride you're in for. We see a lot of them black and white 1950 yes, they do all the tropes. And there's an axe murderer who just broke out of a mental hospital, and there's people making out, a girl in a car, and we got all the 1950s tropes. So basically, all this does is really provide like a really quick setup or origin story to exactly how we arrive with the threat of the movie. We're also introduced to a young detective, Ray Cameron, played impeccably by Dave Atkins. And for those of you who are familiar with Dave Atkins, he's a bit of a Bruce Campbell light, and that's no slight on Dave. Just meaning they both kind of have that cartoonish movie that's sort of not anti-hero, but sort of like really hero type of character. Dave chews up every scene he's in, and he's single-handedly is worth the price of admission. But he's not the only part of this movie. Of course, we fast forward to 1986. We are then introduced to the two protagonists of the movie, these young college undergrads, Chris Romero and J.C. Hooper. We movie makes a point to let you know, like almost every movie in the 80s, that the young protagonist is in fact a virgin. He needs to raise up his girl game. He likes this one girl in particular, so they pledge to the Beta fraternity, and the Beta puts them up to a prank where they have to steal a corpse from a science lab on campus. Lo and behold, they somehow get into this science lab and they discover a frozen popsicle man. Not exactly the cadaver they were looking to find. They hit a button, he comes free, they freak out and run. A scientist comes in to investigate. We know he's a scientist because he's got a lab coat. And this popsicle man's head has exploded. Now, what we soon learn are these parasites that are feasting on people's brains, and they'll breed inside of that brain and reproduce into more of these slug-like creatures. And their control They take over the person's body who are walking transportation vessels. So the twist with this movie is these walking corpses are not the threat. The threat are the slug-like creatures that want to explode out of that person's brain and then get into more people and then turn them into more carriers, rinse and repeat. Now, how do they slug-like people get? How do these slug-like people, these slug-like creatures, get into other people? You ask. Well, they're very fast and they are excellent jumpers and they know how to shoot right into your gaping mouth because everyone's mouth is open because they're always going, "Oh my God." And boom, there's your passageway to their next home where they can go make other slug-like babies and have that person walk to another populated area or they can explode and make more slug-like babies. This is a very common monster type of from the 80s where we have like squirm with lots of worm-like type creatures that are infesting people's basements and stuff. There was, Willard with all the rats. There's Piranha with tons and tons of piranhas. If it was not just one big monster or one big serial killer, there was something that was disgusting and there was 1,000 of them. This is my favorite of them because you have two threats. You have to kill the person who's the zombie to stop them from coming near you, and then you have to deal with the slugs popping out of their head. Again, this movie is a true gem. It's a true delight. There's trope upon trope upon trope. If you fond of 80s movies, you'll chuckle at how ridiculous some of it is, and it's so on the nose. The police are just all the police are all caricatures of one another. There's the one guy who's always eating. There's the other guy who's asking the most stupid question, and there's of course Detective Ray Cameron coming in, letting a butt, saying some smart alecky thing, and he's got an axiogram because back in the 50s he lost his gal. He lost his gal actually quite horrifically. The interplay in this movie is great. The virgin gets the girl. Of course, he rescues her with a flamethrower. The whole scene where they go to the police station and get the flamethrower is just chef's kiss. There's nothing really more you can say about this movie because the plot is what it is. And if I could say just one more good thing about this movie is God bless practical effects. Uh, there's no CGI blood splatters. There's no CGI slugs. Everything is controlled with, wires, every single blood effect, every single smush face, every kill is all done with practical effects. And I believe this might be the first lawnmower kill I've seen in a movie. This certainly predates Dead Alive. I'm guessing Peter Jackson probably saw this and said, "I'm going to make a movie with a lawnmower." He raised it up a notch for Dead Alive, for sure. But again, let's give some little tip of the hat to Night of the Creeps for having been the first to do the lawnmower kill. Um, I can't recommend this movie highly enough. It's just a shit ton of fun to sit down and watch. It's a tight 90-ish minutes, and I think it'll make a Dave Atkins fan out of you too. So super, super high recommend for me. This is a four ghoster. Although I think Dan gave Screamboat four ghosts, which was sacrilege. So that makes this a five ghoster just based on that alone out of principle. He wanted to give it high marks for being an IP thing, but I mean, yeah, being the best of shit is still kind of shit. But this movie is not. So to quote Detective Ray Cameron, what is this? A crime scene or some kind of a B movie? I That was terrible. You should watch the movie just so you can hear that line delivered by Dave Atkins and not this schmuck. Um, a quick fun note though. Yeah, if you picked up on it, Fred Decker made some for sure deliberate uh, tip of the hats by naming his characters Romero, Hooper, Cynthia Cronenberg, and again, Cameron. All all nods to great directors of 80s horror movies. And yes, Cameron used to direct really great movies, with aliens and things like that before he got swept up in his fetish with blue aliens that like to copulate with animals and such. Night of the Creeps. NeddKnight's 5 under the radar zombie movies. Give them a watch. Let me know what you think. You know, I love the comments. You can tell me my movies are trash. I'm all for it. Come at me. Till then, later, nerds.